Hi everyone. Well, I got out of my bathrobe. Haven't really done my hair or anything, but let's go ahead and get on with this pattern. This is Kwik Sew 3954. I'm about to make the third shirt of this in 2 days. So it's safe to say I love this pattern, and I'm gonna show you how I do it. You can do it, it's easy, it's 3 pieces, and it's just fun. Now it is rather long, Batman angle. Okay, so I have this one on today, and you can see it hits me about mid-thigh. Now, if that is too long for you, of course you can shorten it. They have drafted it to be quite long. So I'm going to show you how I'm cutting it out, and then I'm going to show you how to put the bias binding around the neck for a very clean finish. This is a wide neckline, so if you don't like that, you might have to bring it in a little bit. I happen to really like a wide neckline. All right, let's get going. Hang on. Okay, today's version is being made from what is essentially swimwear fabric. This is a nylon spandex. It's fairly heavy. It's very stretchy. I thought I was going to make leggings from this, but then I realized I wouldn't really have anything to wear with them. That design in there is brown, not black. So I have cut out the sleeve, and I made the sleeve 2 inches longer. It's a short sleeve, but I really like elbow length. I have cut out the front, and this shirt is drafted to have a high-low hem, and I didn't want that, so I'll show you how I changed that pattern piece. I'm getting ready to cut out the back, and you can see just how long this dang tunic is. I'll leave that up to you if you want to make your tunic shorter. All right, let's get a closer up view of what's going on here. The front piece as drafted, you would cut down to this corner, and then they have you go way up. I don't know if you can see those lines that were there. So what I did was I just took my back piece, I laid it over the front, and I lined up the armhole seams up there, and then I just brought it down and traced a new line here for the hem of the front. So before it had curved up, and I just brought it straight down here so that it would be an even hemline. Now I'm going to pin this back to my fabric and cut it out. You want to make sure that your fabric has been pressed. And then you want to find the selvage, which is the edge. This fabric is marked with a white edge. That makes it very easy for me to know which way to fold it. I'm going to fold it across, selvage to selvage, and we'll make those sides meet up. And then what I will do over here, since I'm cutting the back on the fold, is that I'm going to look at my fabric and make sure that the design over here on the fold is coming up evenly all the way down. Once I've determined that that is even, I'm going to place my pattern piece on the fold. This is my back pattern piece. It has been pressed even though it looks very wrinkled. Place your pattern piece on the fold and pin that first, all the way down. We're going to line it up on our fold, and we're going to make sure it's very even there. So that way we're going to stabilize the center, and then we can cut from there. So as I'm pinning, I thought we could chat about this phrase, selfish sewing. Now, okay, there's the center that is pinned. I smooth out my pattern and fabric. We don't want any ripples or bubbles or anything under there. And now I'm going to pin the rest of it. So, selfish sewing bothers me. I don't like that name. I think, well, here's my reasoning. First of all, the word selfish has very negative connotations. Nobody wants to be accused of being selfish. Oh, he's so selfish. He just only thinks of himself. So to call it selfish sewing is quite unfair in my estimation, particularly because women who, let's face it, we do most of the garment sewing. I love that men are sewing more. You know, I love Nora Stanta Ford for putting sewing on the map for men, and Dope Dudes Sew and all of that. I love it. But women have enough guilt. This is my theory. We have enough guilt going on. Why are we going to lump on selfish sewing on top of that? Now, yes, I sew for myself. I do sew for Brad. I do sew for Colin. I made a dress for Candace. But I predominantly sew for myself. And I call that self-sewing. What's wrong with calling it self-sewing? Not selfish. Self. I make things for myself. And so I understand what selfish sewing is. I understand that it means you make things for yourself. I don't know why we are supposed to be sewing for everybody else if this is our hobby. Sure, it's nice to make things for others. I loved sewing for my children when they were little. And I love making stuff for Brad and my family now. But the fact that I make clothes for myself does not mean I am selfish. And it doesn't mean you're selfish either. So let's just put that little phrase out to pasture, shall we? Okay, now, and maybe it doesn't bother you. I'm turning the pattern piece so that the tissue is always to the right of my scissors. It's a preference. I feel like I get a lot more precision that way. Coming around the bottom, I do not keep scraps like this. They go straight into the trash. So now we have our back piece cut out. We have our front piece cut out. And we have our sleeve, and that is all this little tunic takes. So let's go to the sewing machine, shall we? All right, let's go ahead and take the pattern tissue off of our front piece. This is the bias binding that will finish the neckline. More on that in a moment. Well, we remove all of our pins and take our pattern piece off, and then we are going to attach the sleeve. Now, this is a raglan sleeve garment. Raglan sleeves do not have to be set in. They are first sewn to the front flat, and then they're sewn to the back flat, so they're really quite easy. All right, here is our front. Here are our sleeves. Now I can tell the difference between the right and wrong sides with this fabric. If yours looks the same on both sides, you can always just take a piece of Scotch tape, which I really keep handy in the sewing room, and just put a piece of tape on the wrong side so you'll know. Front sleeves always have the single notch. Okay, so we're going to match single notch on this side, and we're going to match single notch on that side. So we're putting these sleeves onto the front of the garment. Let's pin it. Don't need a whole lot of pins, at least one to hold it in place right there at the notch, because we want those notches matched up for sure. And now we're going to sew those sleeves on. I have white thread in my machine and I'm just going to leave it like that. So before we start sewing, we are going to match up those edges. That's the sleeve and the side seam. Very important to get those edges right. And I feel like they never ever show you that in the pattern directions, but you want those lined up. So we are going to put them under the machine, and bear in mind that this pattern calls for 1/4 inch seams. Now that's pretty tiny, okay? So the needle is placed down there. I don't know if you can see any of this, at 1/4 inch. Let's get going. Now I'm not going to back stitch because I will cross over that seam again, and that'll keep it nice and finished. Okay, so we're coming to our notch. We'll just yank that little pin out and head right on up there at a 1/4 inch seam. At the neckline, I will back it up. I still get these buttons confused all the time. All right, done. And there is our little 1/4 inch seam that we have sewn. We'll do the exact same thing over here with the other sleeve. Right side to right side. Okay. Match up those ends. Oh gosh. I wish I had a cameraman. Wouldn't that be great? Okay, match up those edges so that they're right as even as can be. Put them under your machine at 1/4 inch and prepare to sew. I was going blind without my glasses on. Okay, now I can see. Here we go. Up the armhole edge. We are coming up to that notch. Oops, my pin's under there. Get the pin out. It is not a punishable crime to sew over pins. It's not preferable to sew over them, but you know, it happens. Okay, 1/4 inch seam coming up to the neckline, and get things nice and even, and we will back stitch there at the neckline. So now I want you to see that we have both of our front sleeves on. Here's the front of the tunic. We've got one sleeve here, and we've got one sleeve here. And now we're gonna do the exact same thing to the back, okay? Hold on. Okay, so now you can see that our tunic is starting to look like something. Hello.
You look like a man holding up a tunic.
How do you like your new shirt? Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we are gonna put bias binding around this raw neck edge. Lord help me set up this camera angle. Hang on. People get up in arms about purchased bias binding. They wouldn't be caught dead with it on their garments. Well, I'm not one of those people. I absolutely love purchased bias binding for finishing necklines, and I'll show you how I do it. We're going to open out a fairly good amount. and we're going to iron out one edge. This is single fold bias tape, but it has two folded edges. So that's a little misleading. We're going to open out one of those edges and press it open. As I'm opening it and pressing, I'm going to kind of shape this bias binding into a curve. And it will curve for you because it's cut on the bias. And there's a lot of movement and flexibility when something is cut on the bias, even out of woven fabric. So you're just going to open up one edge, go along with your iron and press that one edge open. You want to keep the other one folded and just give it a nice round shape. This is going to go on your neckline, and when you sort of pre-shape it, it makes things easier. Now, here's our garment, and we want the right side out. So we're going to work with the right side facing right side. So the right side of your bias binding is the side where you don't see the fold. And the side where you do see that little piece folded in, that's the wrong side. So we're going to go around and pin this bias binding on our neckline. Right sides together and raw edges matching. All right, so I'm just gonna go around and do this. Now where I start, I'm gonna leave a little flap. Okay, we need pins. And I'm gonna take you into the other room where there's better light and see if you can see this a tiny bit better. Here's the right side of our neck edge. That little folded edge is the wrong side of the bias tape. So we're gonna do right sides together. I'm gonna start at a seam and I'm going to have a little bit of a flap there. Then I'm going to just start pinning the bias tape to my neckline. And we just kind of go around, leaving a little bit of give so that when we attach by machine, we'll have enough and we won't have to pull it. The bias binding, since you have already pressed it in a curved shape, it's just gonna want to, oh, I have two pins in there. It's just gonna want to sort of hug the edge of your garment. It's really nice how it works like that. So go along, pin. I place my pins about every 3 inches. Here's another seam, so I'm gonna have that seam pressed flat. Now I chose not to serge my seams with this knit top. You do not have to serge knits because they don't fray. And when you do serge them, they add a little bit of bulk, particularly where seams cross over each other. So I just left them off of this top. All right, working our way around the neckline with our bias binding, lining up those raw edges. Forgot my glasses again. I have 900 pair and they're never ever where I need them to be. Oh, such is life. Okay. I'm just gonna do this in real time so that you know exactly how it goes. So you'll have a lot of these little seams because these are raglan sleeves and we sewed them right there at the top of the garment. Okay, 2 pins again. Yeah, I know, I could get a pin cushion. So now we're coming around to where we started. 1 more pin, and you'll notice I have not cut my bias off of the little card because I don't want to box myself in if I needed more. I want to be able to just keep unwinding as much as I need. When I get back to where I started, I'm just going to let it overlap a tiny bit and snip it. Now we're going to go to the machine and sew it on. Okay, I find it goes well to actually remove that part of your machine if you can do that to give you the free arm to work with. And we're going to put our garment and our bias binding right there where we ended pinning. That's where we're going to start sewing. So we will put our piece of binding under that little flap. Remember how we left that little flap? Well, don't sew that one. Keep that one free. Oh, glasses. Yippee. Okay. Oh, I had some. Look at this. I had them on top of my head. Oh my gosh. Okay. We're going to be very close to the edge because it's that little quarter inch seam again. So now if you can see this, we're just sewing that binding right onto the garment. Right sides together with a little quarter inch seam. When you come to the raglan sleeve seam, make sure they're opened up flat underneath. Sometimes I kind of have to correct them as I'm going along. And we just go around making sure our raw edges are lined up. Round and round we go. Doo, doo, doo. I think this is just a very nice, clean finish for a neckline. And in case you're wondering about a woven bias tape on a knit neckline, I can assure you it does not create any trouble. In fact, I think it's nice because it stabilizes the knit. All right, here I come to another sleeve seam, so I'm just going to open it up and make sure that it's laying flat under the presser foot. They sort of want to fold up together when you're sewing. Oops, I went over a pin. The world did not stop turning. Thank heavens. All right. Again, I'm just doing this in real time so that there's no confusion as to what's happening. And this is not difficult to do. You want to just sort of guide the edges together with your fingers as you sew. You don't want to be pulling anything tight, just a nice, easy fit. And now we are coming around to where we started. I'll show you what I do to end it. Back where we started, I'm just going to sew that little flap that we left open. I'm just going to sew it right down over our beginning. And I back stitch to lock it all in and cut. Now we're going to trim our little seam and turn our neck edge. Let's go. All right, so we always want to clip curves, and a neckline is curvy. So just take a couple little clips out of those curves, just snip to the seam, but of course not through it. I don't think you need to go crazy putting in clips. I just do them every couple inches or so. Okay, once you've put in some little clips there, here is the time you want to use your pressing ham. I find it invaluable because almost all of the directions for putting in bias binding at the neckline have some crazy thing where they tell you to turn it and then baste it and then top stitch next to your basting, and I don't have time for that. So I turn my garment inside out. I take my ham and I'm going to put my garment on it and turn my bias binding to the inside. Now you'll notice that when I'm turning it, I'm leaving a very thin line of the fashion fabric in my fold. That is important because you don't want your bias binding to show on the outside. So turn a little bit extra of the fashion fabric in and give it a nice press. And I'm pressing on the wrong side. If you want to use a pressing cloth, that's fine. Once you have pressed it, go ahead and pin it. You can just pin it like that, straight like that, and go around your whole neckline. This is why the ham helps, because it's shaped. It's not just flat, and so you can get nice curves. Be careful of steam on synthetics. They can melt. Okay, so see how I've turned that? You can see just a little inkling of the fashion fabric. Go ahead and anchor it with a pin. Turn it again and press. Anchor it with a pin. And you'll just want to keep going around like that. Turn, press, pin. Turn, press, pin. And just get it nice and straight on there. Actually, not straight. Get it nice and curved on there. Back to the start. Yes, we are. There's our starting pin. All right. We have our neckline pinned, folded over, and anchored with pins, and now we are going to take it to the machine and sew it on the wrong side, which will create top stitching on the right side. So come with me and I'll show you how I do that. Again, I like the free arm for this because it gives you more control. Choose a seam to start at. And you want to get down right there at the edge of your bias binding. Trying to pick the machine up to show you. Okay, right there at the edge of your bias binding. And round you go. Now, take this one a little bit slow because A, you have to pick those pins out, and B, you want to make sure that that little edge of fashion fabric has been folded back so that your bias binding is not going to show on the outside of your garment. Just bring it along, around the curves, nice and easy. Everything is smoothed out. No bunches, no tucks. Guide it with your fingers. They are the best guide. I bet if I could turn off the sewing machine light, you could see it better, but then of course the machine won't work. This video is going to be incredibly long, but for you newbies who want to watch it, I'm making it for you, okay? And I am cheering for you because you can do this. I know you can do it. All right, so we're just going around and around, and we are almost back to where we started. This took no time at all. Now I just remembered my top stitching is going to be white. Well, I don't think that matters. Okay, when you get back to the beginning, back stitch to lock everything in. Cut your little thread edges. Now we're going to go back for a final press, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. This time I'm going to have the garment right side out, and I will use a pressing cloth because I'm on the right side of my fabric and I don't want to scorch anything. But we're going to press it to set those stitches and to make sure our neckline is just coming out nice and flat and pretty. So we're just going to, you could use the ham for this again, but I'm just going to press it flat. Easy enough to do. And you'll want to go all the way around, come around to the back. And back to the front. There's your neckline. What I'm going to do is put in one of my labels right there. My labels came from Dutch label company. They're okay. I am not super happy with them just because, well, they're a little off center, and this fabric, this label fabric, when you sew it, it really shows the needle puncture. It almost splits the threads in it or something. Anyway, okay, here's my back neck, and I can see my two seams here, so I'm just going to line it up right there in the middle and stitch on my label. All right, we're very close to finishing. We have our neck done. All we have to do now is turn our shirt inside out again, and we're gonna match up the side seams and the sleeves. The way Kwik Sew directs you to do this is to sew from the bottom of the garment straight up to the sleeve. And that's actually a nice idea, because if you had serged these little seams here and pressed them toward the sleeve, then you're sewing in that direction and you're not sewing against the seam. I did not serge my seams, so I'm just going to pin those open. My seams open. I'll anchor it there, and we'll go down here and line up our edges nice and carefully. If you want to make your top shorter, you can try it on and see what length you like. I kind of like them long. I definitely like them long with leggings, but I don't know, maybe I'll cut this one off a little bit. So pin that side and pin this side and sew it up on the machine, but don't forget 1/4 inch seam allowance. When you are sewing a long seam like a side seam, it helps if you can to hold up your fabric. Just hold it up down here where it's going to be feeding in, and the machine just seems to like that better. You're taking the tension off the fabric, sort of hanging off the edge of the table. Guide it with your other hand and hold it up with this hand. And the machine just kind of grabs that fabric and it goes along quite nicely. You'll see that we're doing the little, maybe you can see that we're doing the little short 3/4 inch seam allowance. I only have one pin in this side. No, I have three. Oh, never mind. But sometimes with these long seams like this, you don't need a lot of pins, particularly if you can just hold up the fabric and guide with your other hand. It sort of alleviates the need for a lot of pins. All right, I'm just going to keep sewing my side seam. I'm going to get up here to my sleeve and underarm seam, and I'm just going to turn the corner when I get there. I would come up to the underarm, stop right on the seam with your needle down, just turn the fabric, turn the corner, put your presser foot back down, and continue on your merry way. Lining up those two raw edges. Oh, we are almost done with this top. I'm gonna go try it on now that I've gotten the side seams and the sleeves sewn, and let's see if we like it. All right, you guys, we have a tunic. Now, it is rather long. I could chop off some of that length. I might do that. It fits well up here through the shoulder. There you can see the neckline and how it turned out. There's our little raglan sleeve seams. Here's the back. I don't know if there's a sway back. I don't do those alterations. Now, if it bothers you for the front to be a little bit shorter than the back, you can do what I do and just serge off some of the back so that the front is a tiny bit longer, and just hem it that way. So to finish this tunic, all you're going to want to do is turn up the sleeve about a 1/2 inch and top stitch. Decide how long you want it to be. turn up your hem. I think they said the hem allowance is 1 1/4 inches or 1 inch. So you would just turn it up and top stitch around. You can go around twice to sort of mimic a double needle, or you can go around once. You can do whatever you would like. Some people use steam-a-seam to press the knit fabric up, and that sort of takes care of any rippling that might happen when you go to stitch it. Whatever you think is best, it's your top, it's your sewing, and you are a success. So keep sewing. I hope this video was helpful. I hope this gave you a little bit of insight into how you can sew a really cute and successful tunic. You don't have to run out and buy Kwik Sew 3954. You can use any tunic pattern that you'd like, but you can do it, okay? I'm rooting for you. Have a wonderful Saturday. Bye.